Think of a decision you've been putting off. Not a trivial one, I mean a real one, like hiring someone, letting someone go, restructuring a team, raising prices, exiting a partnership. And now ask yourself, can I clearly name 3 variables that determine whether this decision will succeed or fail? Not 10, just 3. And can I describe how those interact? Or does the whole thing just feel heavy, lumpy, complicated? If clarity has broken down, then that's not a discipline problem. It's a representational one. Because you see, clarity degrades before effort does, and when clarity degrades, decision quality will follow. My name is Gwen Bach. I have a master's degree in applied neuroscience, and I'm the founder of Applied Brain Lab, where I study how modern work environments alter the biological conditions under which judgment operates, really decision-making. And today we're looking at decision-making as a biological system, not as a personality trait, not as a mindset, but really a scientific system that operates under real constraints. Let's start with energy. The brain is about 2% of your body weight, but it consumes more than 20% of your resting metabolic energy. So your brain is an expensive piece of equipment that you keep. And because it's expensive, it constantly optimizes for efficiency. Under stable conditions, that works fine. Under sustained cognitive demand, something happens. The brain compresses complexity. It reduces how many variables it tracks, and it leans on shortcuts, closes decisions early. And this is not laziness, it's metabolic economics. The key concept here is working memory, your mental workspace. It's what lets you hold multiple variables in mind and reason across them. When you evaluate a strategic pivot, model financial projections, along reputational risks, or think through second-order consequences, that's all working memory. And its capacity, it's limited. Under cognitive load, it shrinks. And when that happens, you can no longer hold the full structure of a complex decision. Instead of modeling 5 interacting factors, you model 2. Instead of weighing operational, financial, relational, and timing dimensions, you default to whichever is most mentally available to you, and urgency crowds out importance, recent information, long-term thinking, emotional discomfort, structural reasoning. And this doesn't feel like failure to you. It feels like you're moving quickly, but the decision has already narrowed. And research on cognitive load confirms this. As mental demand increases, people generate fewer alternatives. We evaluate fewer factors per option. We become more sensitive to how things are framed and rely more heavily on default responses. That's a capacity issue, not a character one. It's also worth separating workload from stress. Workload is volume, stress a physiological state, and it compounds the problem. When uncertainty is high, control is low, and pressure is sustained. Prefrontal functioning degrades. The part of the brain responsible for flexible, complex reasoning becomes less available, and ambiguity feels riskier. Irreversible decisions feel heavier. Delay starts to feel like the safer options. You can still execute, but your ability to model complex futures gets shallower. That's how strategic drift begins, not through dramatic failure, but through gradual narrowing. Here is a simple illustration of how easily reasoning can shift. In a well-known research study on framing, participants were shown 2 fictional parents, both in a custody case. And one had a stable income and moderate emotional warmth, and the other had a very strong bond with the child, but a more unstable lifestyle. Half of the participants were asked who should receive custody, and the other half were asked who should be denied custody. And many of the participants picked the same parent for both conditions. The information was identical, only the question changed. When asked who should receive custody, People focused on positive attributes, and when asked who should be denied, they focused on the negatives. The framing determined what felt relevant to them. And we don't just simply evaluate options, we build justifications. And now imagine that mechanism under reduced cognitive bandwidth when working memory is constrained. Whatever reason is most easily accessible becomes the deciding one, be it recent conflict, social discomfort. The most available reason wins, and that decision still feels rational to you. And this is why, under pressure, professionals tend to overweigh recent feedback, avoid irreversible decisions because they carry emotional weight, and they escalate commitment because backing out feels costly, and close decisions early just to reduce the tension. And each of those behaviors reduces immediate discomfort, but it also reduces strategic precision. And small distortions repeated over time, they will compound. Careers don't derail from one bad call. They drift from dozens of slightly narrowed decisions made under sustained pressure. Decision quality compounds, and so do the distortions. And discipline alone cannot fix this. Discipline will help you execute. It doesn't help restore working memory, and it doesn't reduce framing sensitivity. If you want to protect decisions in demanding environment, you need a structure. And in professional environments, they don't just generate cognitive load, they systematically increase it through what I call microfrictions, constant notifications, fragmented communication, unresolved emails, ambiguous ownership, repeated context switching, people popping into your office. And none of these feel significant, but they accumulate and they consume your mental bandwidth without solving your problem. And that load rises and the depth of your reasoning starts to fall. You can still function, but you're modeling less. And so there is this issue of open loops and commitments that occupy your mental space, even when you're not actively thinking about them. An unfinished decision, a conversation you're avoiding, a strategic question left open. The brain maintains partial activation around each of them. And when too many of those loops are open, your baseline cognitive load rises and you begin every major decision with reduced capacity. Add chronic uncertainty, volatile conditions, public performance metrics, reputational exposure, which increases metabolic demands, which triggers more compression. The more unstable the environment, the more reactive your decisions become. And because this shift is gradual, it just feels normal. And this is the environment most ambitious professionals and business owners are working in. And that is the environment decision narrowing becomes invisible. And invisible narrowing is the most dangerous kind because it feels like efficiency, but the modeling has already thinned. And if you don't actively protect your decision architecture, the environment will degrade it for you, which is why I structured countermeasures and why those matter. The framework that I've created is called SCATR, SCATR. It's not motivational. It's a very practical protocol for preserving decision quality under pressure. S, scan operating conditions. Decision quality is state dependent. Your cognitive capacity fluctuates with sleep, metabolic state, emotional activation, and how many open loops you currently have. So before an important decision, ask yourself, am I fatigued? Am I emotionally activated? How much is currently unresolved? And this is not reflection for its own sake, because I don't do that. It's calibration. Under elevated stress, prefrontal flexibility decreases and your defaults get louder. If your cognitive state is significantly compromised, delay irreversible decisions where you can, obviously. See control bandwidth. Every unresolved commitment occupies working memory, even passively. Controlling bandwidth means closing loops, externalizing tasks, reducing informational noise before major decisions. It's not about productivity, it's about recovering representational capacity. More bandwidth means better variable integration. A. Anchor relevant variables. Under compression, what's accessible tends to dominate what's actually relevant. Anchoring restores that discipline. For any significant decision, name the 3 variables that fundamentally determine outcome. Not 5, just 3. And then ask, what's the strongest case against what I'm currently leaning towards? This confirmation forces broader modeling. Without it, your existing inclination quietly governs that process. T. Timing and execution. Fatigue increases impulsive closure. Stress goes towards loss aversion and defensive aggression. Decisions made under depleted bandwidth are structurally weaker. And even when you feel confident, where possible, align irreversible decisions with higher capacity moments. And this is not avoidance, it's sequencing and timing. Our review. Without deliberate review, distortions stay invisible. After significant decisions, ask yourself, which factor did I overweigh? Which did I ignore? Was urgency distorting the process? And over time, this builds the ability to catch distortions earlier. It's not because bias disappears, but because you start recognizing your patterns. And SCATR isn't about perfect decisions. It's about keeping the reasoning process structurally sound under pressure. Decision quality is one of the most consequential assets in professional life. Careers, companies, capitals, and teams are all shaped by repeated decisions under pressure. And most professionals and business owners, we track goals, revenue, output. Very few of us track the conditions under which our decisions are actually made. And quality doesn't collapse dramatically or suddenly. It narrows gradually, invisibly, and modern environments don't protect judgment, they compress it, which means you want to maintain your decision integrity, that stability that has to be engineered by you. And SCATR is one way to do that. So if this is useful to how you think and work, please subscribe